On Zombie Reddit, today's story is...
My ex allowed his girlfriend to pretend to be the mother of my son on Instagram until I found her account dedicated to Wesley. What I discovered years later left me shocked. At the end of my divorce from 34-year-old Nathaniel, I'm 30, I imagined that I could calmly focus on taking care of my newborn baby Wesley. However, instead of enjoying special moments with my little one, I find myself involved in one of the most disconcerting and annoying scenarios I have ever experienced. My baby is just a few months old and is the greatest joy I have ever felt. Although I have primary custody, Nathaniel has the right to visit on certain days. The problem is that he is quite unreliable with his commitments, even failing to show up completely without even sending a message, which is really discouraging. I have given myself completely to creating a protective and loving environment for Wesley, and despite all the difficulties, I have managed to maintain a certain stability. Recently, Julie appeared, a 25-year-old girl who is now dating Nathaniel. She is exactly the prototype of an Instagram influencer you could imagine. If you know the typical profile of these people, and then you meet Julie, you will make the connection immediately. I saw her for the first time when Nathaniel brought her along during a visit to Wesley. He was polite, but I noticed something strange in his attitude, as if he were trying to excessively please me, which is unnecessary because, frankly, I'm not interested in his approval. I didn't pay much attention to Julie until recently, when I noticed images of Wesley appearing on her social media profiles. At first, there were just a few photos, Wesley in his pram, or asleep in his car seat. It made me uncomfortable, but I decided not to worry about it. I assumed that Nathaniel had taken the photos and sent them to her, which annoyed me but didn't merit a fuss. Then came the descriptions under the photos. One showed Julie holding Wesley with the text, "Mommy's little angel." Another said, "I can't believe how blessed I am to have this little one in my life." And the one that finally broke my patience. A picture of someone holding Wesley's bottle with the comment, "Getting up at dawn to feed him is exhausting, but it's worth it for my little one." She was behaving as if she were Wesley's real mother, as if she had carried him for 9 months and gone through childbirth to bring him into the world. I called Nathaniel immediately to find out what was going on. He had the nerve to suggest that I should feel grateful for the affection she showed towards the child. Grateful to someone who is trying to falsify reality and present my baby as her own? Impossible. I asked her to remove those photographs. She flatly refused. She argued that she was not doing anything wrong, and that she was not declaring herself as the legal mother to the authorities either, completely oblivious to my concern. Or maybe she understood it perfectly, but she just didn't care. The situation worsened. People I barely knew began to contact me. Even distant relatives congratulated me for allowing Julie to assume the maternal role. One person even asked me if I was still in contact with Wesley, because it seemed that Julie had officially adopted him. This situation was becoming untenable. I informed Nathaniel that I did not want Julie to get close to Wesley. I did not make this decision impulsively, but considering everything I had observed on his networks, my request was totally reasonable. I made it very clear to him that his behavior was disrespectful, inappropriate, and harmful to both me and Wesley. He was my son, not his. He had no right to use him as an accessory to get virtual approval and attention. I know Nathaniel well enough from having been married to him, and I knew he wouldn't take my concerns seriously. To him, I was acting irrationally, not his obsessed girlfriend. He claimed to be jealous of Julie and bitter that I didn't want any woman to get close to my son. By his logic, Wesley wasn't exclusively mine, but also his. He stated that they could do whatever they wanted with Wesley, including taking photos and sharing them online, and that I had no authority to interfere. He suggested I forget about the matter because Julie was here to stay. I consulted with my lawyer about my options. She explained that, although it represented legally uncharted territory, I definitely had grounds for a case. Publishing images of Wesley without my consent violates my rights as primary guardian, and the comments could be considered misrepresentation. My lawyer recommended taking Nathaniel back to court to formally address the situation, and that is my intention. Naturally, Nathaniel is furious. But there are also my rights, according to my lawyer, and we will face the judge again if he refuses to resolve the matter peacefully. He accuses me of pettiness and jealousy, suggesting that I am only looking to create conflict to ruin his supposedly perfect life. He tries to manipulate me by saying that I would waste money on legal fees instead of investing it in Wesley. Typical of Nathaniel, always deflecting responsibility and presenting himself as a victim. Meanwhile, Julie intensifies her campaign. She posts more photographs of Wesley, now adding tags about motherhood. I blocked her, but mutual contacts keep sending me screenshots. The issue goes beyond simple photographs. It's about setting boundaries and respect. Julie is shamelessly invading my space, and Nathaniel is allowing it. I worry about the future consequences for Wesley. How can I explain to him that a stranger was pretending to be his mother on social media? Among my friends, there are different opinions. Most consider Julie's behavior strange and inappropriate, although some think I'm exaggerating. They suggest I ignore the situation, block Julie, and move on. But I can't just ignore it. Something is deeply wrong, and I will not allow anyone to distort my son's life story. I am preparing for new legal battles against Nathaniel. I regret having reached this point, but I see no alternative. Julie is using my son to gain followers and digital approval, and I must stop her. Am I being unreasonable? Should I ignore this and concentrate on raising Wesley? Or do I have justification for taking legal action against Nathaniel and Julie? Update 1. I received numerous messages asking for background information about Nathaniel and me and the reasons for our divorce. Initially, I didn't include it because it would make my story too long, but it does help to better understand the current situation. Nathaniel and I met during my university years, being neighbors in the same building. I was 21 years old and he was 25. We started with casual chats in the corridors and coincidences in the cafeteria near our apartments. One day he approached me and asked me out on a date. At the time he seemed wonderful, the typical boyfriend you would see in romantic movies. He would bring me coffee during my late-night study marathons, he would organize weekend getaways when I felt overwhelmed, and he had a special gift for making me smile. He seemed ideal, someone truly interested in building a future together. Looking back, I realized that I fell in love with the image he wanted to project, not with his true personality. The first months are usually idyllic, as is often the case, and then his true nature begins to show. After graduating, we moved in together, and 2 years later, he proposed. We had an intimate ceremony with nothing remarkable and began our married life. The first months of marriage were positive, but gradually his attitude changed. Initially, he showed small, controlling behaviors. He would ask about my plans with friends or make comments about my expenses. They were minor issues that escalated into big arguments. If something didn't follow his preferences, he needed to control everything from where we had dinner to how we spent our weekends. My parents had never approved of my relationships prior to Nathaniel. They always found flaws in those guys, but with Nathaniel, the situation was radically different. They loved him immediately, apparently meeting all his standards. I began to doubt my perceptions, thinking that if my demanding parents approved of him, perhaps I was exaggerating the problems. However, as our relationship progressed, his control intensified. He criticized my decisions, tried to separate me from my friends, and made me feel incapable without his approval. Everything collapsed a year ago when I found out I was pregnant. It was totally unexpected, but he also had a surprise in store. Shortly after confirming my pregnancy, I discovered he had been unfaithful to his mother's friend. When I confronted him, he simply argued that our marriage was falling apart and he was looking for something different, although different did not imply age. Perhaps this explains his subsequent relationship with Julie, moving from an older woman to someone even younger than me. That same night, I packed my belongings and moved in with my parents. When my parents discovered Nathaniel's deception, they were devastated, although evidently less than I was. They had always loved him and considered him perfect for me. They blamed themselves for not detecting his true personality and for having constantly supported our relationship. During my labor, Nathaniel was not even present. I contacted him when the contractions started, hoping for his company at least. Instead, he made up an excuse about being busy and asked me to keep him informed. I spent hours of pain and exhaustion completely alone, bringing Wesley into the world without the support of the person who should have been there for me. It broke my heart to realize that, even at the most significant moment for our son, Nathaniel showed no interest. He seemed to have decided that Wesley was not his responsibility, leaving me to face everything alone. That has been my experience with Nathaniel, who did not even act like a father on the day of the birth. Update 2. I am back with news. I see that my previous update provided more context to my situation and the difficulties faced with Nathaniel. Therefore, his current behavior is not surprising. It also explains my recourse to legal representation, as it is the only way to get results. He is not a reasonable person, and I do not believe he will change. Since filing my lawsuit against Nathaniel and Julie, the situation has been surprisingly calm. Nathaniel has completely abandoned his visits to Wesley. Weeks have gone by without any contact, which doesn't really surprise me. I have known for some time that Nathaniel was unreliable as a father, but this confirms my previous suspicions. He seems to have completely given up on his parental duties. He has made no effort to spend time with Wesley, nor has he even asked about his welfare. His justifications have been extremely weak, but there is something else to share. A friend sent me a screenshot of a video posted by Julie on Instagram stories. Initially, I didn't know what to expect, but it was shocking. Julie appeared crying inconsolably at the camera, maximizing the drama. She accused Nathaniel's evil ex-wife, clearly referring to me, of kidnapping her son by preventing her from seeing him. Indeed, she accused me of kidnapping my own son Wesley. If your child was really kidnapped, you would seek legal justice. You wouldn't post a video on Instagram. She sobbed as she described her terror and disorientation. Her followers commented en masse, advising her to contact the police and file formal complaints. The situation seemed unreal. Not only was she perpetuating the farce of pretending to be Wesley's mother, but now she was directly accusing me of taking the child away from her. Frankly, I felt furious. I could not passively allow her to distort reality, especially with such an obvious strategy to manipulate perception. I decided to send the video to my lawyer along with the link provided by my friend, keeping Julie blocked. I was unaware of its possible impact on the case, but I considered that any evidence would be useful. My lawyer responded hours later, indicating that this constituted exactly the evidence needed. It represented compelling evidence for our case, potentially crucial in demonstrating Julie's lack of boundaries and manipulation. She added that it could be used to further highlight Nathaniel's negligence and lack of paternal involvement. The video not only revealed Julie's insolence, but also showed the lengths she would go to in order to insert herself into Wesley's life, regardless of the truth. Furthermore, although she did not name me explicitly, she clearly defamed me. When my lawyer confirmed its probative value, I experienced a certain euphoria. I quickly went from indignation to satisfaction at having evidence. I had feared that I would not have enough solid evidence to support my position, but now I felt that the pieces fitted together perfectly. I am not only seeking to maintain current custody, but to obtain full custody. I will ensure that my son does not grow up exposed to this disturbed person. And if Nathaniel replaces this relationship with another equally problematic one, I will also prevent Wesley from coming under his influence. I feel more at ease now. Many friends, especially those who had doubts about my legal actions, now fully support me. They saw the video, they verified Julie's actions, and they expressed revulsion. Even those who initially thought I was exaggerating now recognize the obvious manipulation. My phone is constantly buzzing with messages of support, which is honestly a relief. I take no comfort in having to witness that video because the situation was obvious from the start, but now I have to be more careful about who I choose as friends. I was also amazed at how many friends pointed to Nathaniel's absence as another worrying sign. No visits for almost a month, no explanation, no communication. Honestly, it's an unexpected advantage that strengthens my legal position. If he doesn't even show any interest in visiting his son, what rights can he claim? My lawyer agrees. She said it would be difficult for him to justify maintaining parental rights without showing any effort to participate in Wesley's life. My representative believes we have extremely convincing arguments, and this new video evidence will significantly strengthen our position. How exactly can this impact be measured? By waiting for the court's decision. This is the current situation. I will continue to report on developments, and again I thank those of you who are supporting me. Update 3. Julie seems determined to sink deeper, unwittingly strengthening my case. After her initial posts seeking to generate pity, I had hoped she would take a hint and desist, but instead she escalated her actions. Surprisingly, she created an entire profile dedicated to Wesley. She didn't even try to hide it. She named the account something like Wesley's mother. Honestly, I try to block it out because it's disturbing to process. I can't even adequately describe the situation, but the fact that she felt authorized to create a profile with his name on it seems sick to me. Not to mention the photographic content published. These are not simple, everyday snapshots. She shares images of Wesley in my home during visits with Nathaniel, although I never authorized their dissemination. What is truly alarming is her persistence in publicly proclaiming herself as his mother. She posts deeply personal comments about missing her little boy and looking forward to being reunited with him. It constitutes a flagrant invasion of our privacy. She no longer represents simply a superficial obsession, but a potentially dangerous fixation, generating concern about her possible future actions. I had no alternative except to seriously address the situation. I have formally requested a restraining order against her, officially adding charges of defamation to the legal process. Her statements about me, particularly accusations of kidnapping Wesley, are not only scandalous but potentially harmful. It increases my frustration that Nathaniel remains passive in allowing the situation to continue. He is perfectly aware of the existence of the lawsuit, but instead of stopping his partner, he simply allows her actions. If he really cared about Wesley as he claims, he would demand that Julie stop her posts and respect our boundaries. However, he remains completely inactive. I don't know how Julie came up with the idea of becoming a mother figure to Wesley, but I will not allow this madness to continue. Her followers, apparently with less critical capacity than Julie herself, feed this behavior. I have read some truly disturbing comments. Regarding the defamation lawsuit, my lawyer claims to have solid arguments, although I don't know if all the lawyers express similar confidence or if we are really well positioned. However, I believe in our case, considering that all of Julie's actions potentially damage my reputation and family environment. Additionally, the restraining order will provide some peace of mind, knowing that Julie is legally unauthorized to intrude on our lives in such an inappropriate manner. My only desire is peace. I want to raise Wesley in a safe and balanced environment, away from the toxicity and manipulation that Julie seems to enjoy practicing. At this point, I just hope the court recognizes the gravity of the situation. I hope you understand that Julie's obsession goes beyond the merely disturbing to become potentially dangerous. I will continue to report on the progress of the case. Update 4. Quite a long time passed without updates. Finally, the case concluded, and I cannot describe the relief of having overcome this stage. I wanted to share news before, but my days have been busy, fortunately mostly for positive reasons. I will start by mentioning the situation with Nathaniel. His visiting arrangements were reevaluated, and honestly, that wasn't even the most complex aspect of the process. Nathaniel showed minimal interest in visiting Wesley, which considerably simplified my position. The court seriously considered this factor, acting accordingly. I devoted considerable concern to the potential effects of her presence in Wesley's life, but in the end, it became clear that Nathaniel really did remain absent regardless of the agreements. Julie, by contrast, put up more resistance. She tried to demonstrate her supposed importance in Wesley's life, arguing that it was unfair that she had been kept away. However, all her arguments were based on her own fantasies. And fortunately, the court clearly perceived this reality. She was given no credibility in court and was basically ignored during the proceedings. It was somewhat pitiful to watch her striving for something completely unattainable, but this was happening in real courts, not on Instagram. We even managed to delete her account, as after the verdict and evidence confirming my maternity, the account violated the social platform's policies and they proceeded to delete it. The last account created was irrelevant, but the main one did matter because of its large following. Another significant achievement was obtaining a restraining order against her. Initially, I didn't know how necessary it would be until I experienced its benefits. The peace of mind that comes from knowing that she is legally prohibited from contacting us or approaching Wesley is indescribable. Julie violated our boundaries in many ways, and now she is legally prohibited from continuing. In addition, Julie faced considerable legal consequences. The defamation lawsuit related to accusations of kidnapping my own son was successful, and it was comforting to hold her accountable for these falsehoods. Julie deliberately tried to damage my reputation simply out of frustration at her limitations, and the court recognized this intention. It seems incredible how bold she was to accuse me of kidnapping Wesley, but I am pleased not to allow her impunity. It is surprising the lengths to which some people go to gain relevance on social media. Circumstances gradually returned to normal, as Julie faced considerable public backlash following these events. Once the community understood the real situation, from false accusations against me to emotional manipulation using Wesley, widespread criticism began. It is satisfying that their strategies to increase followers and approval ended up causing precisely the opposite. Surprisingly, Nathaniel and Julie ended their relationship. Apparently, after recent events, Julie realized that Nathaniel would not provide the family fantasy she had imagined. It seems that Julie was only maintaining the relationship for access to the child, but if Nathaniel selflessly abandons contact with his son, she lost motivation to continue. I will not pretend to be interested in their breakup. It really doesn't concern me, but it is certainly reassuring to know that Julie is no longer part of Nathaniel's life. Her continued presence would have carried the risk of new complications. The further she stays out of my life, even if only as my ex-husband's partner, the better. There are also positive developments in my personal life. I am currently in a relationship. Although recent and moving cautiously, I feel genuinely enthusiastic. It is especially comforting that I have known this person for a considerable time, eliminating pressure to move forward precipitously. We have been friends for a long time. He is fully aware of my history with Nathaniel and Julie, and he is extraordinarily understanding. He understands my past and respects my rhythms without pressuring me into situations for which I do not feel ready. Generally, circumstances improve progressively. Wesley evolves favorably, and I dedicate all my efforts to guarantee his happiness and well-being. Update 5. I am not always right in my perceptions, but I was definitely right about Julie. I was convinced that her relationship with Nathaniel was based on access to the child and exposure on social networks as a supposed influencer. Someone shared with me a certain Instagram profile belonging to Julie. Although she appears to have changed her hairstyle and dyed her hair, it took some observation to identify her. Although years had passed since my problems with this woman, I would hardly forget her appearance. I briefly followed her posts and noticed that many users had started to refer to her as the woman who stole a baby. She appeared with another child in these images, but I don't know if it was really hers or belonged to another man who had been the victim of a similar strategy. Shortly afterwards, the account disappeared, suggesting a possible repeat of the pattern. I have tried to look him up, but apart from a few minimal references to my case, I have been unable to find any additional information. His current whereabouts are a complete mystery. However, remembering that curiosity killed the cat, I prefer to keep a safe distance. I have no desire to draw these negative energies back into my life. I have no significant news about Nathaniel, only that he recently requested to reconsider custody arrangements regarding Wesley. Frankly, I'm not interested in addressing this issue. If he is making this request, his lawyer probably recognizes the slim chances of success given his previous behavior. I am currently keeping him blocked and will not allow visits with Wesley. I don't even understand his sudden paternal interest. Perhaps he's experiencing late regret, or possibly starting another relationship with someone interested in paternal dynamics. Edit. I promise I did not actively seek out information about Julie, but I did receive information about her situation. Apparently, she moved out of our city, information that would have been useful to know beforehand. What was truly shocking was that the photographs showed encounters with children in public parks. Children with no relationship to her, simply captured photographically without authorization. When the parents discovered images of this stranger with their children circulating online, they massively reported her account until it was deleted, in addition to filing a formal legal complaint. As a result, she is currently serving a 3-year sentence in a correctional facility. Even more disturbing, I initially assumed that all the images were of the same child due to their similarity in blonde hair, but they were of different minors. I may need an eye exam.